I just watched a fantastic webinar on climate change, and in this video, I'm going to show how to enter a PDH activity using that webinar as an example. So the first step is to log into the MSc portal. There's a few ways we can do that. They're identified in a separate login video, but for the purpose of today, I've just typed in sci-fi.inonetouch.org into my URL, and I'm logging in there. I'm then brought to the dashboard. For PDH activity entries, we want to focus on the professional development tabs. So we've got one here at the top with a number of drop downs, and the same drop downs here are on the right hand side under professional development. So we want to focus on PDH submission. Now, before we get started, if your activity has a web page, definitely have that web page open in a separate tab to help you during your entry. It will save you a lot of time. So in my case, I watched a recording of a webinar that actually was live in 2020, but in 2022, I watched it. So it's important to just make note of that. All right, so the first question here that they're asking us is our submission year. So what year are we submitting this entry for? Well, there's only one option, 2022. The system is set up so that you can only enter hours for the current entry year. So we're going to click that. Now, category. What category does this activity fall under? If you're not sure what category it belongs to, you should be opening our professional development model or PDH entry tool to help you with your entries. The professional development model has all the information that you'll need, and it's available just here in the same window. If you go to resources and library, the model is available in that library. So once you've gone in and looked, we would determine that our webinar would fall under education. Then the next section here is our meat and potatoes of our entry. So we're just going to kind of follow the steps here. What's our activity type? It's a webinar. What's the title of the webinar? Well, we're just going to copy and paste it because we have our tab open. So responding to climate change as public health professionals. It's asking for start date and end date. So in this case, it's just a 1 hour webinar, so the start date will match the end date. Our host organization is NCCEH. Now, all these ones had little red asterisks beside them, so that just indicates they're mandatory entries. So you wouldn't be able to proceed to the next page until you've actually given an answer to that question. The next three items here don't have the asterisks, but we're still going to take a look to see if they apply. So web link, yes. In my case, I do have a web link, and that's extremely helpful. By including that link, it's now automatically telling an auditor, should I get selected for audit, who the host organization was, who presented it, what the content was, so a little bit of a description about the webinar, and also when it was recorded. And as a bonus, there's actually a link to the YouTube video that actually has the full recording. So it's really got everything that the auditor needs. If your activity had supporting documentation, you would add it here. So these would be things like a course agenda, let's say, or a workshop agenda, or a certificate of completion. And if you were attending a university course, let's say, and there was a specific course number for a course, you would be putting that in here as well. So description, we're just going to write see web link here because the web link has all the details that an auditor would need. But in the event that you didn't have something like that, this is where you would write who presented it, how long was it, what was it about. Those types of details would go into this box. So now we enter our number of hours. So the first line here is for the number of full hours. So in this case, we've entered 1. The second row is for the number of additional minutes. So if your webinar or your activity was a whole hour, 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hours, you just leave it as this. But if you have a half-hour activity, so 1.5 hours, or let's say it was only 30 minutes, then you would select the 30 minutes option here, and it would calculate it as 1.5 or 0.5 or 2.5 or whatever it may be. So I'm going to leave this as 1 and as 0. And then you click Next. That's all. It automatically takes you to a summary page, And so what this shows you here is if you've submitted a declaration for a reduction of hours, it will show you how many hours you've got reduced here. We do have a separate video available on this. So if you're in a situation where you think you might be eligible for reduction, take a look at our video to see. It will also show you here how many PDHs total that you've submitted and how many are still required. If you want to go look in more detail, you can just click Manage. So here it's going to show, so far I've submitted 2 entries, both under the education category and both for 1 PDH each. If you want to go in and manage or look at your individual entry, you absolutely can just by clicking here to edit, or you can delete an entry if you made a mistake. It's all available here. Now, if you want a little more info just about your entries or where you're at any time, just from the dashboard, even just from logging in at any time, you can go to Professional Development and just go to PDH Submission Review. And that same table will just pop up right away just to kind of give you a reference of where you're at. Now, if you keep scrolling down, you'll actually see there's a bit more of a detailed breakdown, and it shows you all the possible categories and their respective category caps, because some of them have maximum, so you can't get all your 30 hours from formal mentoring, let's say. As you can see here, it caps at 10. So this gives you a breakdown. And then the far right column will actually just show you how many PDHs you've actually obtained from that category. So your total at the top here about PDHs submitted and still required, it does factor in information about category caps. So it's really, really helpful to come take a look here. And so you might be a little confused if you're looking at your summary later in the year, but then you realize, oh, it's because I've exceeded my 10 PDH limit for this category. I submitted 30 in here, and that's why I'm still it's still showing that I'm missing some hours. So this can be really, really helpful for you. But hopefully this is helpful, gives you some information on your PDH entry. And if at any time you're performing an entry and you've got some questions, do not hesitate to reach out to our COPE team at cope@sci-fi.ca.